today we got to play Stevens spelled with a PH. Why? I don't know.
Because
Okay.
some people spell their name that way.
Okay, I believe you. I don't know why. But this game is about glass blowing. So, but before we get into it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell because board games are amazing and that's what we do here at Legends of Nirvana. Now, Randy, can you tell us a little bit more about whatever this game is called?
I don't know why you're having such trouble with Stevens.
There's a PH.
So Stevens is a 2024 release. It was actually one of the Capstone Essen releases. It's got a rating of 7.4 and a rank of 12,850. It's a 1 to 4 player game, 60 to 120 minutes in length, age 12 and up. Probably just because there's a kind of a lot going on as far as strategy. Design is by Costa and Rolla. I guess they just go by one name because it's two different people, Costa and Rolla. Art is by City Lowe and Lucas Siegman. Published by Capstone Games, and it's an economic contract in-game bonus and set collection game. MSRP on this is $59.95. Boardlandia has it cheapest, but just by a few cents at $47.96. Card House at $48. Miniature Market $47.99. So pretty much anywhere you buy it, you're going to be paying roughly $48 for it. So it's very reminiscent of the Elia series games from the early 2000s. So I actually was pretty impressed with it, component-wise and everything. But we'll get into that.
All right, so let's talk about the components. All right, you do have the terraforming Mars cubes.
Yeah, those were not that exciting.
And then you have the wooden cubes of different color varieties. You have the wooden circles. Some of them are screen printed for special things on the board.
But the board is what's great. It's got inlays for all those discs on it. I really like the board.
Yeah, and then the cards do have a really good linen finish. It is a really good thickness. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's nothing else standing.
No. But if you compare it to those 2000 era Elia games, the quality of this is much better. But that's what it really looks like as one of those type games.
It
Granted,
does.
We're in 2024, mind you. This looks great for a 2005 game.
But it's not 2005.
But it's not 2005. It's 2024.
Right. No, but I'm not mad. I mean, there's nothing that exciting. You have cardboard money. You do have the terraforming Mars cubes. Like, I'm gonna give this 6.5 because the card quality is actually exceptionally nice.
And the cardboard's a good thickness.
So. And you do have a few screen printing, so I'm 6.5.
Okay, I'll probably give it a 7 because I think the inlay boards are really cool and they got glossy in them. So I like the inlay boards a lot, and the print screening on the wooden bits is really nicely done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they used a different font and made it really cool. All right, so moving on to theme. So, okay. The art is a little lackluster. It is not. You're right. It reminds me of the early 2000 games where art wasn't as important, and I think that is consistent. But the theme, however, the fact that you're hiring artisans, the fact that you're blowing glass, the fact that you're trying to obtain resources and deliver them to the factories. That's there.
Well, it's not just that. There's 2 rule books, which we get to the rule book, but one of them is a 4-page document that just goes through the timetable of the Stevens company, William Stevens, and his history. And I mean, there's a lot of thought put into this, and there's also a 1-pager in the main rule book. So they really took time to tie into the history of the Stevens company.
Yeah. So as far as art, not so much. As far as gameplay, it does show up. So I'm probably going to give this a 6.5 in theme as well.
I'm probably going to give this a 7 as well because I think that putting together that timetable for the Stevens was incredible. and I do think the gameplay is integrated.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so moving on to the rule book. How was that rule book read?
The main rule book is actually 24 pages in length. It has a cover that matches the cover of the box, and it's got the one pager, as I mentioned, of the history. Got components, got the pictures of the components, the overview on what you do on a turn, which the turns are very basic on this. You know, you basically have your choice of 2 different actions, which we'll get into here in a little bit, but there's a lot of options that come from those 2 actions.
Yeah.
Then it goes through the setup of your board. This is where things got a little confusing, because when you get to the player board, they show all the discs displayed and filling in the board, but then you're supposed to remove one, but it wasn't clear which one you were supposed to remove. As it turns out, you had a few choices that you could choose for which one you removed, because you play one onto the board right away with your worker, but they didn't go through a good explanation on how to go about doing that until you get to the later section where you're actually assigning new workers onto the board. And at that point, you know, that's where I guess they assumed you would just read ahead and get to that and then go back and fill in. But I think during setup they should have put that in there. But they go through each of the different things, the icons basically, and what they trigger when you look at the icons. And then they have specific rules on how things can be played onto the board or onto your board. And you know, it's a pretty clear read, but it is a lot of text. And they do have good examples in here for each of the different actions. They have cheat cards, but without reading the rules and understanding the rules, these cheat cards are very cryptic iconography. At first, I didn't even know what these were. And especially these 2 here that actually walk you through the reset phase.
I tell you honestly, it reminds me of some of those early 2000 cheat sheets that weren't that great, but you were so excited to have them. So
I thought these were maybe for the solo play, and then I'm like, wait a minute, these look like the actions that you get to take on your turn on this. And then I was looking at that, and I was matching it to the icons in the book. I was like, okay, so this is telling you how to do the reset phase. You're better off just reading this. Once you get it, it's pretty self-explanatory. You won't really need those cards.
No,
but
we did
use them
for
as a
end
guide.
of round. For end of round, that helped a lot.
Yeah, the reset phase, it was a good guide, but once you knew what the icons meant.
That's true.
So yeah, I think the rulebook does a pretty good job. It's just a lot of reading. I'll give it probably a 7.5.
So let's move on to actually how to play the game. Now, Randy insists that there's only 2 actions. I maintain that there's 3. So you guys can figure that out for yourselves. All right, so then at the starting game, you won't actually have any resources up at this top tier, that part of the board, and you'll kind of only have access to 2 of those actions that first round. So one of the first ones is to be able to take a cube off of this main factory level, if you will. And if you do that, that gives you ability to go out and get contracts, or go out and basically get resources that will come into the factory.
Or to trigger any workers if you take from the top 2 spots.
Yeah, exactly. So, or in the top 2 spots. But now, when you take a cube off, you actually take that cube into your supply to use to fill for contracts. That is not the case for when you get these cards for, because they look like production, and they kind of are, but they go straight into the factories. So basically you're getting this income to go in the factories. Now, where you place those cubes in the factories does get you resources later on. Now, this is where Rainey and I disagree. He thinks that the second action. The second action is I can spend resources to add a master marksman, I don't know, master glassblower, somebody up here, and they complete an action when that area is triggered. So you have to trigger the area that they're working in to be able to get that resources. Now, everyone that has a worker in that area, it does trigger. So sometimes, like for example, it benefited for me to like also pair with Randy on one of his things, even though that gave him a victory point, but the benefit was very, very useful. So obviously something I wanted to do. And it will trigger all of that, whoever has those tokens on those things. Now, some of them only allow for one person, so some people can't hitch a ride, but others can.
But if everybody who has a card in that row will trigger their cards. So
Right.
even if it was a solo card, you might still be able to trigger multiple cards.
Right. So, I mean, it's quite a benefit. Now, in my head, the second action is to take from the secondary thing, and you get to take 2 cubes off and trigger those workers. Yeah, it's kind of the same.
2 cubes. You trigger 1 cube.
Well, if you've opened up.
Yeah, you can unlock your board by whenever you play a worker, you get to remove a disc from your board. That was the second action, and that will allow you to take more cubes from wherever you take them from.
Mm-hmm. And so you could take more cubes off that top tier versus like the lower tier. So there is that little bit.
So yeah, so the book says that you're either playing a disc from your board to create a new worker at one of the sites, or you're removing a cube from a site. They don't differentiate between the upper board versus the middle board.
Well, I think actually for me, it's the ones where you're getting the cards versus the one you're triggering the things. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's like there's a line here. Because there you're triggering these versus this, you're actually picking up cards.
Yeah.
So for me, maybe that's where the split is. In my head, there's 3.
What's really interesting is when you play the worker cards to the board, you have to play them from bottom up. So there can never be more or even equal in the row above than there is the row below, unless you unlock the ability to play equal. But you can never have more in a row above. So your bottom one is worth less victory points at the end than the middle, which is less worth than the one at the top. So I found myself setting up Miranda throughout the game for those big points at the top because I just, out of necessity, to unlock the discs from my board.
Oh no,
Yes.
what a shame.
And yeah, I lost by 3 points as a result of that, but I still pulled in within 3. Within 3, and even though she got a lot of it.
But you got all the second. Yeah, I got most of the top, but you got most of the second.
Yeah.
In fact, I have 2 where you have 4, 5, 7. So, but every time you put a second one down, I always put a third.
Yeah.
But you had to have the resources to be able to do that and have that squared away. Where the bottom was a little bit more diverse. I think we saw a lot more diversity there. Overall, I enjoyed the game. At first, I didn't think I was going to like it very much because the contracts were like only victory points. You didn't get anything for completing them at the time of completion, which is kind of weird to see.
Yeah.
But it turned out okay. I was not mad. I didn't know how. Yeah, the investments. I didn't know how it was going to work out. It turned out fine. So there were some things I had some concern when you were reading the rules, but as the playthrough worked out, it worked out pretty streamlessly.
Yeah.
I was fine with it.
The way the investments and the victory points from your contracts work is unique in this because it doesn't consider an individual card. It considers a column. So you can, on the investments, you can choose to trigger a whole column, but in some cases there's penalties for doing that because you're using up resources. Whereas in the victory points, you add up the total number of cubes pictured on the cards for that column and multiply times the number of cards you have, and that's your score for that column. So there's all, the scoring in this is really a unique system, I thought. I haven't seen anything like it.
Yeah, I thought that, there was a lot of unique components that I was like, I don't know how this is going to work, but it turned out to work out fine. I think it's well balanced. I think it was a fun playthrough. Like you said, even though I had the top row, you still almost won. So that, and I honestly wasn't sure that I was going to win, but I was very fortunate to squeak through.
Yeah.
So overall, I was actually really happy with it. I'm probably going to give this a 7.
Yeah, I'm probably going to go a little higher. I like the fact that you get to choose your scoring at the end. I mean, you can unlock these discs, and basically you can score pretty much anything you want, whether it be money or your influence in the areas or cubes you have left over or the different sets of these combinations of goods that you have. You get different choices. You can unlock them all, but you may gain more benefit just unlocking the ones that are relevant and building up on those. So that's how I got within so close with you, was really this one here, the one for the influence, because I had almost maxed out my influence chart, whereas you had burned most of yours in the last round and you only had a little bit left over. So it really it kind of counters, everything counters pretty well. We both unlocked everything, but I didn't see much yield out of money.
Yeah, I think it will be also very different when you have more players. I think the ability to unlock might be a little bit more. Plus, where this one, you're relying on somebody. Like, I was waiting for you to play second. Like, I kept resources and thing. Like, I wasn't going to play to the second level, knowing I could grab the third. But if you have more players, you're not going to be able to wait around like that.
Right.
So I do think with more players, that might bring a more interesting aspect to it. And also, I don't know if it will.
Although, I will say I think it'll play fine at 2.
It plays fine at 2.
Yeah.
I just think the strategy would be a little bit different with more players.
Yeah, because the clock is going to tick faster than you want it to, because
towards the end,
there's this military cannon is the French army, and they move up 5 spaces every round, and so kind of like in Ark Nova or Rise of the Ganges, when they cross one of the scoring markers, doesn't matter whose, that's what triggers the end of the game, and everybody gets one more. You finish that round, and then you get one more round around the table, and it's over. So your scoring is going to be cut off potentially faster than you want it to be, based on the actions the other players take.
Yeah. So, what'd you score?
So I'm probably going to go ahead and give this one. I think I like this one at probably an 8. That's where I'm at, because I like these dry Euro style games.
I don't mind it.
I mean, this one I think is very much reminiscent of those games from the Elia series, which I'm a big fan of. So
yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We had an absolute blast, and hopefully you'll come hang out with us again. We'll catch you guys later.
bye.